Welcome to Crusade Conversations, an interview series and resource for artists, curators, collectors, and people who care about the beautiful things in their world. I'm Jennifer Schwartz, your host and #1 crusader for art. I own a fine art photography gallery in Atlanta, the Jennifer Schwartz Gallery, and an online photo project called The 10. Crusade Conversations is an initiative of the Crusade for Collecting, a project born out of my passion for supporting art and artists. The Crusade's mission is to cultivate a new crop of art lovers, patrons, and collectors by encouraging people to engage with art in exciting and innovative ways. Today, we are welcoming Phil Toledano, the illustrious, the mythological Phil Toledano. He is, if you go straight to his bio, he's from London, as you'll hear in his accent, and he believes that photographs should be like unfinished sentences, always space for questions. Philip's work is socio-political and varies in medium from photography to installation. One of the things that I think is most interesting about your work and about the things I've read...
Among so many other things.
Right. You have a variety of interesting things about you, not the least of which is your mythological characteristics.
Status.
But in a lot of the interviews that I read with you, and in one of the things that I think is most pertinent to my crusade and my interest in people being innovative and doing things to build their own following, your work is not, a lot of your work is not the easiest or most accessible subject matters. And
you're saying basically I'm the most unsellable artist on the planet.
You've got a little bit of a challenge there, I'll tell you. And yet you're illustrious and, you know, all those other things.
Well, only in my own mind.
Well, apparently that's working for you. So what do you, when you set out to do this and you gave up your big-time job and decided that this was something that you really felt compelled to do, was to make art, but you didn't, tell me about that, how you made that decision, because that couldn't have been a light one.
It actually was a light one. It was a very, I tend to be very, sort of bestial in my thought process.
Uh-huh.
By that I mean that I tend to sort of do things, I feel as though there's a lot of thinking that happens unconsciously, and I just sort of spontaneously do things. So I happen to have, I'd been working in advertising for about 10 or 11 years, and I had, the last job I had was possibly the worst job I'd ever had. And in the sense of it was just utterly, unremittingly miserable at all times, for a variety of reasons. Mm-hmm. And I was actually deeply grateful for that, because I remember clearly thinking at the time that I just cannot continue. I mean, I had another job offer to go work at another ad agency, and I turned it down, and that was sort of an important moment for me, because I remember thinking, I'm going to turn this other job down because I cannot continue to do the same thing for the next 10 years. I actually have a very peculiar process that I do for when I think about stuff, and that is that I sort of...
Eeny, meeny, miny, mo?
No. I think of myself in the future, looking back.
Okay.
If that makes any sense.
Sure.
So I thought of myself in my late 40s working, and I had this whole vision that I was, I had like the full patch and the denim shirt and the Looney Tunes tie, and I was working on relaunching the Today Sponge or Always with Wings, something like that.
Wow.
And I was looking back at myself thinking, wow, am I glad that I stayed in advertising, or would I be glad that I'd left to become an artist?
When did I make the wrong turn and purchase the Looney Tunes tie?
Exactly. And so I realized, when I was thinking about it that way, I thought, you know what, I should not be, and I've sort of been complaining to myself for such a long time about wanting to be an artist, wanting to make art, wanting to take photographs, etc., that I just thought I got bored of listening to myself complain. So I sort of wanted to shut myself up. So that's what I did.
And so I'm going to jump around a lot, because to give some back...
House of Pain?
If given the opportunity. So to give some background, you and I met recently in New York during a heat wave, during the famous, or at least in my mind, it will stand out, the heat wave of 2012, the most dramatic. And you were telling me about a project that you're working on now, and is it top secret? Can we talk about it?
No, we can talk about it.
Because you had just said
radio, so no one can see it, which is fantastic.
What did you just say?
It's radio, so no one will see it, which is fantastic.
So you had just said that you have this process where you think of yourself in the future and imagine, what that would look like and how that would feel. And so that's not dissimilar from this project where you are creating these different potential futures for yourself, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, I can sort of explain the genesis. I tend to, this is actually, I think, the third part of a project. Ever since my parents died, I think that the course of my work has really radically changed. But the current project I'm working on is, I did a project about my dad, taking care of my dad, and that was about my father's mortality. And then I did a project about plastic surgery, and that was about, amongst other things, the idea of reducing mortality. And this project is about my own mortality. And the genesis of that project is essentially, my father was an actor, and I got hold of a film that he was in, and we watched it together. And the thing about parents is you never think of parents as anything other than parents. They're never people.
Right.
They're always parents.
Right.
So all of a sudden I saw my dad at the age of 25, and I was just totally fascinated and struck by this thought that at that time in this film, there was a man of 25, and everything that I knew about my father was unknown to him then.
Right.
The idea of being in the war, the idea of being married, the idea of my mum, the idea of me, the idea of living in different countries, everything was just in front of him, this enormous sort of stretch of fog. And I began to think about what might be ahead for me that I wouldn't know about. So basically I did a DNA test, and then which told me what illnesses I'm likely to get. And then I talked to a lot of fortune tellers, and based on all this information, I make photographs. And the reason for all that fortune teller and DNA test stuff is that the thing about photography is it's always about the past. And this is about the future. So how do you research the future? Well, you have to speak to experts, and, I guess ostensibly fortune tellers are experts in the future.
How many of these images have you created?
I have made maybe 12 so far.
What's the title of the project?
I don't know yet, actually.
The mythological, Mr. Toledano?
What's that?
The mythological Mr. Toledano. I think we maybe have hit upon it. I think this is it.
Yet another fascinatingly, marvelously commercial project from Toledano Industries.
Right, you with the prosthetic oldness. Is that
that's the thing. Is it's actually very expensive and labor intensive because I'm working with a prosthetics person. So each time I do a series of images, it takes 4 or 5 hours to get into makeup, which I really, really hate. And then I take these pictures of myself as that sort of version of myself in the future.
It's fascinating. So going back to this 3-part process, so you've had several different bodies of work kind of out in the world since, it looks like the first one was, you started in 2001, the Bankrupt project?
Yes.
And, but the first book that you had published was Phone Sex with Twin Palms?
No, the first book was actually Bankrupt.
Oh, I didn't know that.
It went Bankrupt, then Phone Sex, then Days of My Father,
and who published Bankrupt?
A New Kind of Beauty. Bankrupt was also Twin Palms.
And who did A New Kind of Beauty?
Dowie Lewis in England.
Right. I often at night lie in bed with the book that you gave me and read that really heartfelt inscription that you spent so long on. That was like thanks, Jennifer.
I'm always terrified when people ask me to sign a book. And then I'm just gripped with enormous.
I'm like, take your time. I mean, just make sure you really you get it all out there.
My father, they expect me to write something incredibly pithy and sensitive, and I'm sort of gripped by the Benny Hill gene, and I either want to say something totally stupid or I just say something entirely mundane.
So how did...
I end up just signing my name most of the time. You're lucky you got more than just a name.
I did.
That's going to be worth a lot more.
Yeah, I did pressure you into it quite significantly. So how did the Bankrupt book come about? Because that was really early on. You had just started really making art seriously. How were you able to pull that together?
Well, it was during the dot-com collapse, and I find a lot of the ideas I have just sort of, they sort of spring out of nowhere, but then they're often connected to things I've been thinking about for a long time. So for Bankrupt, it was during the height of the dot-com collapse, and I was actually scouting for locations in an office building for some shoot I had to do. And I walked past an office that was full to the ceiling of chairs, swivel chairs. Mm-hmm. And when I saw it, it occurred to me, it just reminded me, for some reason, of photographs of mass graves that you see from the Second World War, from basically any war that happened in the 20th century. And it occurred to me that it was a really extraordinary way to sort of show the human cost of the economic collapse, right, and not showing people at all. So I basically would walk around office buildings in New York City, going from floor to floor and just taking pictures of the stuff that I found. I sort of call it economic archaeology.
I love the one of the pencils in the ceiling.
I know. That's actually my favorite.
Because to me, I mean, that has so much personality in it. And like you said, for an image without a person.
Well, that's exactly right. That's what I was going to say. For me, it's such a incredible record of a person's state of mind and who they were and what they were doing at a very particular time without showing it. And I really like pictures that don't sort of give you the whole thing.
So at this point, though, you're basically just starting out this new career in photography. What did you do with that work? How did you get it out there? How did the book come about?
Well, the book. Remember how I was talking about how I'm incredibly unthinking and I'm sort of like I'm like an idiot savant. I'm not without the savant part. So,
without the.
Go ahead. I asked a friend of mine, Mark. I said, Mark, can you give me a list of the top 5 art book publishers, photo book publishers, that you can think of? And one of those was Twin Palms, and I wrote it all 5 and sent them sort of some photographs and an explanation of the project. And then I forgot about it. And then 2 months later, I get this call from this guy.
So you didn't make a spreadsheet with columns on dates to follow up?
No, I didn't do any of that stuff. So then 2 months later, I get a call from this guy, and he says, "Hi, my name's Jack Woody from Twin Palms." He's got this slightly nasally voice. And he says he's interested in doing the book. And I don't know who Jack Woody is. I can't remember what Twin Palms is. So I say to Jack, I say, This is great. This is fantastic news. I just want to let you know that there are several other publishers very interested. And if you are interested, you should fax me a contract this afternoon. I didn't really know why I said it. It just seemed like it was, I don't know.
Right.
It seemed like the right thing to say.
Totally, absolutely.
And then I call up Mark and I say, so this guy Jack Woody called, and this is what I said. And then Mark said, "Are you nuts? Do you know who that is?" And I said, "No, I don't." And he says, Jack Woody is the guy who runs Twin Palms. Twin Palms is a fantastic thing. And then he explained to me who Jack was. Uh-huh. And then after explaining to me, I mean, if I'd known who he was, I never would have said that. I just thought it was some... Because I never would have...
You thought he was like an admin?
I was so ignorant. What's that?
You thought he was like an admin?
Yeah, I just thought he was some guy. I didn't know. An intern. Who knows? So... that was fantastic. So Jack published the book. And
yeah, so did you get the contract that afternoon?
I did get the contract that afternoon.
See?
Actually. I did. It was kind of amazing.
That is kind of amazing.
Yeah, it was shocking.
And then, so when you did the phone sex work, did you immediately approach them first? And you were like, yo, Jack.
Yeah, I said it like that.
Mm-hmm. You're like, dude. We got a thing.
I'm keeping it real.
Keeping it real.
Well,
Well, and I was curious. Okay, so the Phone Sex Project I think is really interesting, and oddly, I've been thinking about phone sex a lot lately. Because I started doing these radio podcasts, and my whole life, people have always said to me, "You have a voice for phone sex or radio." And
they say that, actually. I think they're right.
And so I was thinking, I've always wanted to have a radio show, and now I'm just going to make my own little podcast thing. But phone sex would probably be more lucrative. And so I made that joke to someone recently, and they said that, and it started this whole conversation about, is the phone sex industry even still really out there now with all the video chat?
Well,
do you have
to? That's part of the reason why I did it, because it's sort of like taking photographs of opium dens at the turn of the last century.
It's like a
thing that goes. It's like, actually, I had this secret idea, which I guess if I tell you is not so secret, but to take photographs of people smoking outside office buildings, because I think in 50 years' time, people can look at those pictures and go, "You mean people smoked in public?"
Right.
You know what I mean? Like,
right.
It's going to seem like a crazy thing. No one's going to believe in 50 or 60 years' time that anyone smoked. It's going to be a thing you do if it still exists. That it's going to be like doing drugs.
Right.
So that's one of the reasons I found phone sex so interesting, because it's this archaic technology that's kind of going to die, because, as you say, video chat and stuff is taking over.
Right, because a lot of those operators would not do such a good business on the video chat.
I think you're right.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it depends. What I realized after doing the phone sex book is there's a niche for everything.
Right. You just got to find it.
And I'm really, really boring in bed, apparently.
I love the woman who was like, "I've been in customer service, and it's just the same."
Yeah, well, it is customer service.
Well, it is. It's the ultimate service.
Yeah. But
so,
sorry, go on.
Mm-mm. No, go ahead.
No, you go.
Are we going to discuss my potential phone sex career? Is that where this is going?
I think you've got an excellent voice for it.
Right.
But you have to figure out what the niche is. Like, they told me I could do phone sex. Because
the accent?
But I could be really sarcastic and sort of snotty to people.
Right. So it's a persona.
It'd be like Lord Toledano or something. Of course, I wouldn't use my last name. Yeah, exactly.
That might not be the best move.
One woman, and it was kind of funny.
Well, when you and I met, I think we hit it off right away, and you properly pointed out that my mean streak is just barely beneath the surface. So I think we have that.
It's not very well concealed.
No. Well, I was also very warm. It was a heat wave, I just couldn't. All those niceties, there wasn't enough energy. So I want to ask you about Days with My Father, because I don't know if you know this, but Dave Anderson, who I know is a friend of yours and mine, and he and I have been on a panel together, and one other time I heard him tell this story, and maybe you know, maybe you don't know, that he uses you as an example of...
I don't know.
Okay, all right. So we're on this panel, and people were talking about making books and sort of, or getting a book published and capturing an audience. And he told me that the two of you spoke, he told, not just me, but the entire crowd, that the two of you spoke really early on when the Days with My Father was posted online, and you were telling him that it was getting this great web reception and all of these hits, and it was really it wasn't what you expected, and he suggested that you immediately do something to be able to capture that momentum and that enthusiasm. And his I don't know if he told you that. Well, he told the whole crowd that his idea was that you should put something on the site saying that this project was going to come out as a book.
Oh, yeah, that was his idea, yeah.
And that you could pre-order it here by giving me your money right now, and that you would have made all the money that you would have needed to publish a book on your own in advance.
Yeah, no, he did tell me that.
He says,
but the thing is, I'm not as entrepreneurial in that way as David. So
right. So he
really wanted to publish the book,
Well, ultimately it did get published, but his sort of lesson was that there was all of this momentum around it, and that, you on your own would have been able to capture, right? And you just let that go to waste.
His lesson was that it was also momentum until did nothing. He's quite right. There was a lot of momentum, and it's true that I didn't. What I did was, my version of that was I just asked people to send me their email if they wanted to get the book.
Okay.
And so I got like 17,000 emails.
Right, but
email
not
addresses.
But not $40 from 17,000 people, because that would have been something.
Actually, the book. That's one of the things about that book is about, I'd say, of the 20 or 30,000 emails that I've gotten from people writing to me, I'd say a good half of those have been from kids.
Really?
So I really wanted to make sure the book was cheap. So I made sure the book was $20, which meant it retailed on Amazon for like $12, which was great, because I didn't want to make a big posh photography book. I wanted to make a book that kids could buy.
Right. So
that's why. Sorry.
Go ahead.
You go ahead.
No, you go. So, and what is it now? Like 2 million hits? More?
Yeah, pretty much. The book sold out in 6 months. We sold 16,000 copies.
Wow.
And then they're reprinting actually in August.
Really? Huh.
Yeah, but it's kind of ironic because I couldn't get anyone to publish it.
After all of that? You would think in the beginning, you already had 2 books, and
that apparently didn't matter to anyone. What people said to me was, "Oh, no one's going to buy this book. It's too personal, or it's too sad, or well, it's already online. Everyone's seen it." And I said, "But I've got 17,000 emails from people who want to buy the book. Does that not mean anything?" And they say, "Well," and I understand, but I don't know. They were just wrong, and I'm very happy to prove them wrong. Actually, Chronicle, who published the book, basically the book got published in a partnership with some lovely people called PQ Blackwell in New Zealand.
Interesting. And was that something that you put together, or Chronicle did?
No, PQ Blackwell had published going off down some sort of random rabbit hole of gibberish. They published a book. They published a book that was that was like 50 photographers. For whatever reason, I was in this book, right? Mm-hmm. So then they came to me and they said, "We'd really like to do a project with you." And I said, "All right, you should do Days with My Father." And then I had to really sell them on it. I just really sold them on the idea of doing it. And then they approached Chronicle, who'd already turned down doing the book, and they did it with Chronicle.
And now everyone, right?
Yeah.
Now it's like, haha. And then,
yes, it's haha.
Haha. So do you think? And now it's going to be a movie potentially?
Well, it was actually optioned to be a movie, and then I wrote a screenplay with a friend of mine, and then that kind of disappeared, although I think I'm sort of, in retrospect, quite glad it disappeared, because the book as it stands now is really a beautiful, perfect thing for me, and it's exactly as I want it to be, and all that stuff.
Do you feel like you wouldn't have that type of artistic control over a film?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And that's exactly right. And so I think what's happened is that it was actually made into sort of a documentary by MediaStorm, which came out recently.
I think what actually happened was that you couldn't decide on the right actor to play you in the film.
Actually, funnily enough, often what happens is I'll get emails from schools asking me to do like a Skype conference with their class, high schools, about Days of My Father.
Right.
So I was talking to this school in Kentucky or something. At the end of it, they said, "Is anything happening with the book?" I said, "Well, it's actually been optioned to be a movie." And I said to the class, I said, who do you guys think should play me? And this kid all the way in the back stuck up his hand and went, usually played by Vin Diesel, man.
Clearly.
And, I mean, obviously there's a physical similarity.
Obvious choice. Oh my God.
I mean, I get that a lot on the street, just from my physical presence.
Wow. I wonder
But I kind of love that.
Yeah.
I think it should be Days of My Father, the action film, and maybe I could be played by Vin Diesel, maybe my father could be played by Chuck Norris.
I think that's, I see summer blockbuster written all over that.
Yeah.
It's fantastic.
The way my father and I speak to each other is through brute force. But we do it with love when we bludgeon each other with roundhouse kicks and stuff.
So, okay, so I have to discuss the Kim Jong-Phil work because that, I didn't know, I wasn't familiar with that project until I came to your house and I got to see the bronze sculptures and some of the paintings in real life, which was totally exciting. And then as I emailed you the other day, I was watching TV with my husband, and every 30 seconds I made him pause the movie so that he could look at the next painting. And what, to me, not only are the paintings just something to see, the titles are phenomenal. I mean, I was like crying. I'm hitting him on the shoulder. He's like, I'm watching Ocean's 11. No one needs to see that. You have to see this. So that is a completely, I mean, all of your work has this kind of subtext of, these statements, these socio-political things that you're saying. But this is really intensely over the top in that way, and the presentation of it. So how in the world did that, how did you think of that? I mean, that doesn't seem like, so you were...
Did you see America the Gift Shop?
Yep. That was cool. But I mean, in Bankrupt, you're like, okay, I was
thing,
walking through an office
like,
building and I saw a pile up of chairs. You were... What was the scenario? Were you lying in bed reading and you were like, you know what? I think I should have my face painted
actually, I was
as a
actually
dictator.
in an elevator talking to a contractor and my wife. And then often I'll have ideas as I'm talking to people. Like I'll be talking to them and then something will sort of come out. Like this kind of thought will come out.
Are you having one of those right now?
No, nothing. No, I've had no thoughts.
No.
Of talking to you.
All right. Let me know if one happens.
I'll ring a bell. But the thing for me, the thing I discover, I realize as I sort of continue my odyssey, one man's odyssey as an artist, is that the thing I find fantastically liberating is that I don't have to take pictures. The ideas, when I have these ideas, the ideas kind of tell me the thing they want to be. You know what I mean? So
yeah,
I've been thinking for a long time about my own sort of peculiar artistic process and what I needed to function as an artist, how I had,
you mean like your mental state, like how you have to believe that what you're doing is the most important thing?
Well, yeah. When I explain to people the sort of genealogy of my ideas, they always make perfect sense to me, and then I realize as I'm talking and people are looking at me like I'm crazy, and they're sort of fumbling for the security button under the counter to call the police.
Bring it.
The premise of Kim Jong-Phil is this, I guess, that I often thought about, I was thinking a lot about what I need to function, how I need to function to be an artist. And it occurred to me to be an artist, I need two things. I need to be totally delusional, and I need to be completely narcissistic. So I need to believe that not only am I making stuff that's unique, that the world has never seen before, that no one's ever done before, but I also have to believe that the world can't wait to see what the new thing that I'm going to make is going to be.
Right. So it has to get, the world is holding its breath waiting for your next thing.
Exactly.
Absolutely. I mean, I am. Go on.
Sure. So, which is obviously, all of that is kind of crazy, but then it occurred to me that it's not the similar to being a dictator. When you're a dictator, you have to create this entire world and then populate that world with believers, which is what you have to do when you're an artist. You have to create a world and then convince people that world is worth living in, right?
Right.
So then, from there, it was a very short leap to Kim Jong-Il, because I was just kind of obsessed with Kim Jong-Il, and I sort of thought, oh, hang on, Kim Jong-Phil, that's funny. that tells you how sophisticated my humor and my thinking.
You're like, and then I was drinking beers one night.
Yeah, I was doing Jell-O shots. I was at Hooters, which is where I do all my good thinking.
Right. Who doesn't?
Yeah, really.
This one where you know, dictator you is sitting on the log and the people are around you.
I love that one.
And you say, it's true, I'm utterly fascinating.
Yeah,
Love
that's
it.
the name of it. That's
I know. I know.
Well, because I think that when you go that, if you're going to go that far, you have to go as far out as you can possibly
go. Absolutely.
You know what I mean? You can't, like, get all bashful and sort of semi-modest. Like, if you're going to be a dictator, you have to be totally narcissistic.
Right. I mean, if you don't believe it, nobody else will. That's the whole thing.
Well,
but yeah, I think that's also, I mean, it's tongue-in-cheek, but it's not untrue. I mean, as an artist, you have to sell it. I talk to people about how to present their work and how to, at portfolio reviews or when you're meeting with someone. And the least appealing thing is when I ask someone about their work and they're like, you know, it's like just some pictures I took in a room of myself. I mean,
right.
Okay, you know, I could love the imagery, but if you can't sell it to me, I can't sell it to anybody else, you know? So if you can't, you know, if you don't believe in it 1,000%, nobody else is going to. So, you know, it's the way that you say it is funny, but it's 100% true. I mean, you have to be.
It is funny, but it is totally true. It's a very, very genuinely honest assessment of my own, of the mechanism that allows me to function as an artist. There's a very healthy veneer of comedy on top of it, but I'm being quite candid about how I kind of have to function.
Well, and I think we joked in the beginning about, you know, your work being not saleable, but you've had a lot of success with it, and so, you know, despite what I read somewhere where you said you're the Morrissey of photography,
yeah,
which
true.
I loved, that people only want happy pictures. But if you're an artist and you seek out, you know, you try to make work that people are going to want to buy, it's not going to have that emotional undertone that people are truly going to connect with. And so,
I think you cannot be an artist. It's counterintuitive to be an artist and to not make something that's entirely to do with you.
Right, it has to be authentic.
So if you're making work that you think is going to be viable commercially, then immediately, for me, that just discounts you as an artist, because you're considering the market. And if you're considering the market, then you're not making something that comes from you.
Right.
And so I just make stuff that I really feel I have to make. I mean, ideas have gravity for me. I always sort of consider myself as like a little asteroid tumbling through space, and various ideas they're like planets, and they pull me in. So I have to do them.
You're a little mythological asteroid.
Well, I'm just a little asteroid.
A little mythological asteroid.
Down a very pretty path.
So these paintings, 30 by 40 inches, pretty big?
Yeah, some of them are bigger.
And then
there's one that's 5 foot.
Where are you keeping that one?
They're all my weird stuff. It's all in my studio. My studio is full of weird stuff.
And so have you shown it? Have you done a solo exhibition of the paintings?
Not in America. The thing is, well, I had a show recently in Singapore of the work, which is kind of ironic.
Yes, it is. And so how did that go? Were you there?
They flew me over for it. It's pretty good. I mean, people either really liked it and understood it, or people didn't bother reading the artist's statement and just thought that I was just, there's this artist replacing himself with Kim Jong-Il, and, you know, that's just like not so funny. Or funny, but not that interesting.
But just weird.
Which is always irritating.
Wow, what a weirdo.
it is what I'm doing, and it is a bit of a one-line joke, but at the same time, there's a very important thing that I'm trying to say about how I work in that work.
No, and I think just
Here's what
the authenticity of an
which
artist.
What's that?
And about working authentically as an artist, I think.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right.
And so
you know
when you said...
You know when you remember when George Bush said, the last one we had, when he said he was vindicated by history?
Mm-hmm.
I remember thinking about that. That's the best you can do as president, is say that history's going to vindicate you. You're really screwed. But I've realized actually that that's kind of how I function as an artist. That all these projects I do, totally
right. The next generation is going to be way smarter and get it.
What's that?
The next generation is going to be way smarter and get it.
No. I just maybe actually, but I just sort of, I'm just assuming that at some point or another, I'll be well known enough that people will suddenly find everything I've done in the past eminently sellable or buyable because I'm famous now. Or
right.
But I mean, here's how delusional I am. When I did Kim Jong-Il, I made those statues in a series, in edition of 3, with the assumption that at some point people are going to buy them.
They're beautiful.
They're fantastic.
Yes.
I mean, they're amazingly well made, but, I mean...
Well, when you did the paintings, you said that you had a couple of different artists try it out, right? I mean,
I used different companies in China.
Right. And, all right, well, I totally want this one, the utterly fascinating one.
The thing about those paintings is they're also, which I kind of like, is they're an edition, which is funny because paintings are never an edition.
Are they really? How's that possible?
Well, because I just have another one made.
That seems so, Chinese,
It is, but they're an edition of 5, right? But what's funny is that each one is going to be different anyway.
Right. So...
so they're unique, but editions. But right. I like the idea of doing that to painting. Because you're not supposed to be able to do that to painting.
Right. You're just mixing it all up.
Well, isn't that what art is all about?
Absolutely. Do you think my husband's going to think it's weird when he comes home and I have this hanging over our bed? You're like, what?
Maybe you just neglect to tell him that it's actually a real person.
Well, I mean, I just love it. I got to have it. All right. So I've, monopolized your time for a while, but tell me, is there anything else that you feel really compelled to get out there? And just about kind of building your own audience. I think, one of the important things that we talked about was just kind of going with your gut and doing what feels right to you. And for you, that has worked. And you just wrote a letter to 5 people and totally forgot about it. And maybe that's the take-home lesson.
Well, that's what Ryan McGinley did, but he got a bloody show at the Whitney. So he was aiming a little bit higher than me.
Right. Well, you just didn't write enough letters, You're quite right, actually. I mean, yeah. There you go.
Yeah. I mean, I guess, look, I feel very lucky and that I've had some small degree of success. And I guess you can only make stuff, I think. The only way to be successful as an artist is to say stuff talk about things that are important to you and only you. And either people will find them interesting or not. And if they don't, well, that's fine. You've finished that thing, and then you do something else that's important to you. And at some point, if you're any good, if your tone of voice is interesting, it'll be interesting to other people.
I think one more thing. It does seem that the way that your brain works is maybe unique. So, you are able
are you saying I'm ill?
In the best possible way. So, but I think
in a life-affirming way. You do that.
I think that you are able to have these. You have these ideas, and the way that you're presenting them are unique and not things that people have seen before. But I do think that a lot of people might fancy themselves artists, and they say, I have this project, and it's about rainbows, or it's about something that
unicorns.
Well, that is kind of my tagline. I'm always like, it's all about unicorns and rainbows. But, to really think about pushing it and knowing what else.
Well, I will say, I will say that I find that I feel very often that I'm not going nearly far enough out. Okay, here's a very clear example of that. For a long time, I've been thinking about the idea of taking photographs of blind people, just because very close-up portraits with their, because I'm just interested in this, I don't know, just it's uncomfortable to see their eyes, and
right.
You're seeing them, they're not seeing you, but you're taking a portrait. I just found it all very interesting. And then I was in France last week, as one is, and I went to, do you know who Sophie Calle is?
As one is wont to do.
And as one is wont to be. Do you know who Sophie Calle is?
No.
Sophie Calle is an extraordinary artist. She's really sort of a conceptual artist.
Okay.
And what she'd done is she had taken pictures of blind people, but she went so much further out than I ever could thought about. So she took photographs of blind people, and then she asked them to describe, these are people who had gone blind.
Okay, so they had sight before.
Well, or some of them actually, but she asked them to describe the very last thing they remember seeing. So when you read what they say, and you see the pictures of these people, and then she took photographs sometimes of the thing that they were describing.
Mm-hmm.
It was unbelievable. I mean, it was such an extraordinarily powerful, pure idea.
Right, it's this extra layer beyond just being visually.
Example of me having the beginning of the idea, but her going so much further out, making it this incredibly extraordinary thing. So I looked at that and thought,
you're like, I suck.
Well, pretty much. I mean, because I look at it and I go, wow, there's an extraordinary idea. And I was kind of on the same road, but I never went as far as she did. And that's amazing. And so, you know, I always feel I'm not going nearly far enough out.
Well, but I think you have to feel that way. I mean, then what's the drive to keep going?
Well, you're right. And it's actually kind of amazing to see someone like Sophie Calle, because you see that work and you realize, you know, it was especially resonant with me because I'd been thinking along the same lines, but I hadn't gone all the way down the road the way she did, and it was really kind of mind-blowing to see how far she took this idea and how beautiful it was. I mean, to stand there and look at these pictures and to read the text of these people was amazingly emotional, and you know, that's the work I wanted to make.
Well, I think you got it. I think you're
You.
making it. You're doing it. Not that one, but you know, you've got. I think that you know, especially like seeing the progression of your work and that you're kind of the more clarity of vision and the way that your projects they're not about the same thing, but they are related. You know, there's a theme that you explore that's wide enough to give a lot of room to kind of go in a lot of different directions, but that pulls it all together so that, you know, when you have your MoMA retrospective, you'll be able to look through and see that common thread, which I think is really important in someone who's going to make a career as an artist, that you're not jumping from one thing to the other and you can't see that thread, that you can't see the connection. And
do you think you see a thread in all the work I've done?
I think that in the work,
because I would be very impressed if you did.
Well, I mean, I could make something up. I think that I think definitely in the since Days with My Father, for sure.
Right.
And then, but I also can see the things that you were exploring earlier. They're almost like really small snapshots of a much bigger interest of yours, and that the later projects they're bigger. Does that make sense? So, you know, the ones in the beginning, I feel like, are these small things where you're just starting to figure out what interests you and why. And in the later projects, you're able to pull a lot of those elements together, which to me make the later projects more compelling. They just have a lot more depth to them. Right.
It's interesting that you say that, because sometimes I struggle with the connection between some of the things. I mean, but then when I start thinking about them, I do see connections that are visible to me, but they're only visible to me, you know, sadly.
No. I mean, I think that it's, to me, to look from the beginning to where you are now, I see it, evolving. But
a crescendo of genius.
Exactly. Culminating in you being a dictator and having 5-foot paintings and bronze sculptures.
Right.
Obviously, you have arrived.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for chatting, as always.
Well, thanks so much for asking me to chat.
Lovely, yes.